Hi everyone, this is a part of a series where I'll solve coding math problems to explain logical thinking, strings, etc. So the first thing we're going to do is I actually made a problem on the first logic problem in logic 1. That was about cigars and squirrel cigars. This one is about date fashion. I suggest you watch the one before trying this one. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is read the problem. So here it says, you and your date are trying to get a table at the restaurant. The parameter U is the stylishness of your clothes. And this is in the range 10, 0, and 10. The date is the stylishness of your date. So the result of getting a table is encoded as an int value, with 0 being no, 1 being maybe, and 2 being yes. If either of you is very stylish, which is 8 or more, the result is 2, with the exception that if either of you has a style of 2 or less, then the result is no. Otherwise, the result is maybe. Okay, so we know here that the parameter U is your fashion, the parameter date is your date's fashion. So let's write all of this out, right? U is your style rating, date, your date's style rate, right? So after we know that the range is from 0 to 10. So now that we know all of that, what we're going to do is let's start writing out some logic for this, right? So let's start decoding the conditions here. We see here that if either, so the word either means one or the other. So since we use the word or, we know that either means that you have to use the word or, right? So then after that, what we see is that if either of you is very stylish, which is basically is like if you are greater than or equal to 8, or date is greater than or equal to 8, then the code will return a 2, which basically is talking about a yes, right? Or, so here, then what it's saying, with the exception that if either of you, either, again, has a style of 2 or less. So that would mean that you have a style of 2 or less, or your date has a style of 2 or less, right? That would mean that you return a 0, which is decoded as a no, because if you're not stylish enough, you don't get a table. So then what we say is finally, with the exception if otherwise, else, so that's your else statement, you return a 1, right? So none of the above returns a 1. So now that we have our hard-coded logic, right? So it's pretty basic logic. Let's start trying to code this in terms of coding, right? So the first thing I'm actually going to do is I'm going to code the middle statement. If your date is less than or equal to 2, or you are less than or equal to 2, you return a 0. And the reason I'm going to do that is because here, there's what Python essentially does is it checks it according to the order that the if statements are listed in, right? So let's check this logic with a test case of, so the function call is date fashion, and say yours is 2, but your date is 9, right? So what's essentially going to happen here is if we check it according to the order that we have in this order, right? The first thing that's going to happen is when it's going to check this part, right? So when it checks this, it's going to see that you have 2, But what's happening is your date has above 8. So it has 9, right? So since 9 is greater than 8, it's going to return true. Or 2, my bad. So if it returns 2, that's invalidated because technically it's supposed to return this value, right? So essentially, what we can do is we can avoid this whole situation by putting this above this, right? Because we can technically say that it has to check the 2 value before it can go on to the 9 value. So because this is technically more restrictive and Python can make more errors in this way. So this introduces us to a very important concept where order is key, right? So the order of your if statements can give you a right or wrong thing. So this is where a lot of people make mistakes. And I also made an error the first time I tried this project. So let's start writing the code for this one, right? So the first thing we're going to do is, because we just realized that order matters, if you are greater than or equal to 2, or because it says either, date is greater than or equal to 2, return 1 or 0 because they said no date, right? And then elif, because else if, so elif is basically a statement which says that else, or that means that if this condition is not true, then you check this statement, right? That's similar to what an else statement does, except what the elif does is it gives you an ability to check in steps, right? So that's what elif statements are for. Or under the point of order is key, elif statements give you the ability to check in steps, right? So let's look at it in terms of this example again. If we say that this step is step 1, right? And because this is, you check this first, then you'll check whether your date or you are in 8, right? Or 8 or above in step. Then this will be our else statement because 1, there's no other statements after that, and 2, because if your date style or your style is not above 8, or your style or your date style is not below 2, then the question states that you have to return 1. So instead of writing statements for 1, like if your date is less than or equal to 3, or is less than or equal to, if your date's value is less than or equal to 3, then return 1, we can just say else and generalize it for everything. So now that we understand how to use elif, what we're going to write is u greater than or equal to 8, or date greater than or equal to 8, return 1, oh, sorry, 2, else, because you don't need to, because all other cases should return a 1, just say return. And there we go. We solved this problem. Thank you so much for watching this video. I hope you learned something. And if you have any questions, please feel free to ask in the comments. Thank you. Bye.